So as Ruth said, I'm going to take you through a couple of examples. This kind of types of year session, it's kind of the different types of things we'd be expecting them to do, which is why it fits nicely in with going through the student course session data items. Now it won't be. That's really helpful. Hang on a second. There we go. Okay, so one thing just to mention first, there is no type year field. Because of the way it's set up with providers being able to start their session years and their student course sessions from when it's applicable to them, it means that the type year kind of concept of fitting around a HESA reporting year doesn't make sense anymore. So I just wanted to mention that to make sure everyone was aware of that and kind of show you what they would do instead. So what we've got on screen here is a couple of session years showing how it's broken down into 12 months. And the 1st of August cut-off date, which is obviously around the HESA reporting year at the moment, falls just near the end of the session year, not on the actual boundary. So if you've got a student who was type year 2 now, so they've crossed over the 1st of August date, then their student course session would finish after that. Still within the session year though, so they would still return that just against the same session year as this next student, who is currently a type year 1 type student, finishes before the 1st of August date here, and so they are both on the same session year, but their end dates are different. I've only included this slide just to kind of make it very clear that providers need to get these student course session end dates correct. It's particularly important around the 1st of August. We've had lots of conversations with OFS like this, but I think it is relevant to all providers. The session year has to be 12 months long, but the student course session can be less if that is relevant to what the student is studying. So moving on to some different examples now. So foundation year. So we have a student doing a maths degree, just for argument's sake, with a foundation year to start with. And their student course sessions, they've got 4, 1 for each year and 1 for the foundation year. And as you can see, all of the dates are spread apart for their student course sessions. And the very first one, which is their foundation year, which is a year prog 0, will just be flagged on the first student course session. That's where the year of programme field is sitting. And then the other ones would probably be 1, 2, and 3 if that was relevant. But it's just to show you that's where the level of where that information is sitting in the model. So slightly similarly, but a little bit different, we have a preparatory flag. So at the minute, this is a field against the student course session, again, which is flagging courses that are kind of, accessy type courses. So not quite a foundation degree or a foundation year, sorry, but they're kind of short things that providers might do, say, over the summer before they start, which is what this example is. So a student is doing a kind of little preparatory thing. I need to find some better real life examples to use in this one before they start their first degree in maths in this case. So they can attach it all to the same kind of course and qualification because that's what they're coming out with at the end here. Year of programme is okay to be 0 because it's a kind of preparatory type thing like foundation years. And they would set the flag to be 03 in this case. So the next example then is placement. So I've picked a full year 1 to start with. So on the course for this, it's a maths degree with a placement year in the middle. And so at the course level, they would flag that it is a sandwich course. So 0-1 in this case, it's I think a fixed sandwich as it's a year long. Their student course sessions would be returned as necessary. And in this example, the student on the 3rd year is doing their sandwich placement. So in this 3rd student course session, that's where they would be flagged as placement 0-1 to say this is the student course session where they're going away to do their placement. And as Ruth has already talked through, the off any activity entity, which is off the student course session, they would return to tell us what they were actually doing. So in this example, I think they're doing 12 months, going away for the whole year. We can on these dates, and we're discussing a little bit more detail for the guidance this week, actually. You can have the start and the end to be slightly over the student course session. The student is doing the activity in this third year, that's what they're kind of doing, so it makes sense to associate that with the right student course session. We're looking through the guidance this week to see whether or not we might extend that a little bit further if they're doing more than those weeks, but we'll have that in the guidance when we've got that agreed. The next example is a part-year placement.
Sorry, Rachel, can I just interrupt you there?
Yeah, of course.
If the end of the student course session is very important, how are we ensuring the guidance is clear on what the end dates should capture? Is this the last date of teaching, the last date of assessment, or something else?
I'm going to rather cheekily ask Ruth to answer this because she can probably remember off the top of her head and I can't get the guidance in front of me. Ruth, can you remember what we've actually said about the end date?
I believe end dates are including assessment periods, so it's the end of any planned assessment period, but not including retakes. But I will double check and get back to you.
Thanks,
in
Ruth.
terms of the guidance for providers, we're just going to have to make that very clear to them what it means if they get it wrong. We can definitely validate that they're doing it within the 12 months, and we can validate they're doing it against the session years. But if that student does something shorter than that, it's going to be very hard for us to know that precisely. Kind of like it is now, really. We can't definitely enforce they've got the dates wrong. We rely on them to get it right, and we give them all the reasons what will happen if it goes wrong. So it's something we're going to be looking at, I think, as we go through some of the trial periods in data features to see how providers get on with it.
I think also it'll be one of those things that we hammer home within training as well, that we make sure that there are certain aspects of the specification model that we need to make sure that are hard and fast and clear, and if we can bring that through the training sessions as well, which will come before we go into testing and rollouts, then hopefully that will certainly show the impact to providers.
While we pause, Matt, was there any other questions there?
No, that's the only one we've got at the moment, thank you.
Cool, I'll keep going then. So looking at a part year placement. So we've done a full year. This is a part year. So on this degree, on this example, the course and qualification, again, it's a maths of the first degree. And sandwich is 02, I think, at the minute, which is the shortest the different types of sandwich placements we've got. And because in this case, they're not going for the full year. So they're doing year 1 and year 2 of the program as everyone else is. And then in year 3, they flag that this is a placement 03, which is, I think, other placement in the record to tell us this is the year that they're doing their relevant sandwich placement. So they would return an off-venue activity to tell us what that student's actually doing, so how long they're going for and what type of activity they're doing. And because that's only for part of the student course session, we also need to see a study location for the other part of it. Say this is where the student is studying when they're actually on campus or at the provider. And then again, they finish off with their 4th year. So another example, which is quite similar, is a study abroad year. So again, on their course and qualification, they've got a maths with a year abroad this time, and it's a 01 sandwich to flag it's a sandwich course. Again, students' course sessions 1 and 2 have got their year-long buckets, and then in year 3, which is when they're doing their study abroad year, they return the study abroad field with an 01 to say that they are studying abroad. And then to match up with that, so we know what they're actually doing, is the off-venue activity to say this is where they're going. So in this example, the student's doing an Erasmus placement and they're going to France, I think that is, for the year. And then they finish off their final year. So the next example is intercalation. So this is where it can get a little bit different, sorry, not difficult. So in this example, we've got a medical first degree. So they're going to do standard, I've just done 4 years, which I know is probably not true for medical degrees, but it wouldn't fit on the PowerPoint slide. So we've got this year, the year program 1, year of program 2, they're going to skip out and do an intercalation year, then carry on and come back and do year of program 3 and year of program 4. So these student course sessions are all linked up to this course. Now in this example, the intercalation is at the same provider, so they're not actually going anywhere. So what they do in this intercalation year is they, if the student is doing a particular kind of course or they're intercalating into a particular course, they work out what that one is. So in this example, I've picked biology for an MSc and link it to that student course session. It's the same engagement for the student and the same student obviously being returned. So we know that this is the same kind of pattern of study. It's the same engagement of study. Then this student course session, they would return the intercalate flag, which is 01, and the year of program would be kind of relevant to whatever course it is they've intercalated into. So potentially a 1-year course and year of program 1, or a final year or something, depends what it is. They might get an interim award after the study as well. That's absolutely fine. You know, you can award that through the qualification awarded entity to show that at the end of this year, and then when they've finished, hopefully they'll get another qualification awarded for the whole program. So making that slightly more complicated, intercalations, but at a different provider. So in this example, it's very similar. So we've got the first provider, so provider A, put in green here, they're doing their medical first degree. Again, I've just done 4 years to kind of make it fit on the slide. So they've got the first year here, year of program 1, year of program 2. I'll explain the details of this in a second. Then they skip back to year of program 3 and year of program 4. So because they're going to a different provider, these blue boxes here, the provider B, will be returned by the other provider. So what provider A needs to do is at the end of their student course, their second student course session, they need to tell us that they've gone dormant, because that provider is not going to be returning them again. So they tell us here, so reason the student course session ended, and they have a date to say that they are actually intercalating. So the status change 03 is intercalate. So we know that that student will probably appear somewhere else. So then in the third year for the student, provider B returns them with whatever course is relevant to what they're doing. And again, the intercalate flag is on this year because this is the one that the student is intercalating to. And again, year of program will depend on what they're intercalating to. But in this example, it's a 1-year course, so year of program 1. And again, they could get an award at the end of this year or not, depending on what happens. So the key difference here is because this year is being returned by another provider. Provider A needs to tell us the student is going dormant and that their status is going to intercalate at another provider. And then when that next provider returns them, we know what's happened to that student. I'm going to pause there. Are there any more questions, Matt, before I get to the last few examples? I appreciate I'm probably checking a lot of information there at people.
No, there's nothing at the moment. We can give everybody a couple of seconds just to put together a question if they want to. Just whilst we're pausing, for many of you will have seen that I've posted these videos onto our e-learning software. I'm happy to send the link out again. I will do the same with this video when we are complete today. It takes a few days to process, or a few more days if it's a bit slow, but I do try and get them up ready for the next week. So if you need to go back and revise them, they should be available with you by Monday morning at the very latest. At the moment, there are no questions. You can carry on.
Okay, I'll carry on and I'll pause at the end for more. So the next example, dormancy. So we will go at the next session. Next week is around mode unload, and it will go in a little bit more detail about how kind of dormancy might appear. But just to give you an idea of where it's kind of returned in the record in terms of these types of year. This is a dormant 4-year. Oops, sorry, wrong way around. So again, we've got a maths first degree. They've got 4 student course sessions, because in the second year, the student has gone dormant. So what has happened is the student has come for the first year. Provider thought they were coming back, but they didn't, and they're returning the student again, a student course session to say this student has actually now gone dormant. So the status change 02 is the dormant code there. You will notice this date is just after the end of the student course session before it. So this is where the student hasn't actually done anything in here. So the guidance we're giving is that you should put the end date at the end of the previous one, just so that it matches up and we know exactly what's happened. That is when the student actually stopped and they went dormant. And then the student comes back, and so they finish off years 2 and 3 of their course. So just a note, the expected end dates on the engagement. The guidance here says that you should update it. So at the point the student's gone dormant, when they come back, the provider probably knows how long they're going to be studying for, all goes to plan, and so they would update their expected end date at that point to reflect that. So now resitting. So as with the other one, doing the same course, and year of program 1 and 2 went fine, and at the end of year 2 they didn't pass whatever they needed to pass, and so they had to resit the whole year. So you'd return another student course session, and you would just say that the year of program is obviously repeated to the one that they are resitting. It doesn't explicitly say that this is a resit year. That isn't a requirement explicitly in the model, but we can kind of get it from that because the year of program is repeated, and their expected end date would probably change as well to say that actually they're going to take another year. So a similar example, they're doing resits, but perhaps just at just the exams, not the actual years of the course. So this is just to kind of spell out what would happen here. So we've got years program 1, 2, and 3. So a student has done their study, got to the end, and perhaps failed the exam. So at this point here, so the end of the 3rd student course session, they would return a leaver record because the student has actually kind of stopped studying, but it would be result unknown. And they'd return the end date as well. That was when the student stopped. What would then happen is hopefully the student will take the exams again, actually get the qualification they wanted to get. And so you would return the leaver entity again with an updated reason engagement end to say that they've got an award, and return the qualification awarded to tell us what that award was. And then we know the student has finished. So you will notice the end date here doesn't take the resits into account because it's only the exams they're resetting, and the student isn't actually doing any studying, like redoing any parts of the course again. You wouldn't actually update the end date in this example. So looking at something slightly different then, so ITT placements. So I've picked a PGC, which is just a 1-year course in this example. They return the student course session to say what they've done, and it's in the off-venue activity, which is where they return whatever the placements are that they're doing towards their PGC. So they return the dates, how long they've been doing it, and a URN, which is the unique reference number for the school probably that they're doing it at. And they can return as many of these as is relevant to what their placement is that they've done. So writing up. So this is a example looking at a PGR student. So what is going on here? So we've got math sciences and MPhil here. So student starts off doing the first couple of years of their student course sessions. And I'm going to pause there because I realised I've done the dates wrong. So what I was about to say is not reflected on this slide, so I'll have to change that. This has to be a year long because it's a PGR student and they don't have session years. The student course session is where the year is reflected. So ignore the dates on here. So they've done the first 2 years of study, they come into their 3rd year, and midway through there, they kind of finish their studying part and they're going to write up their thesis. So at this point, they would attach a session status entity to say when the student went writing up. So status change to 04 is writing up, and this is the date that they started writing up. Now, the slight difference with the writing up status in the session status entity is you have to keep returning it if that's still applicable. So even though the student went to writing up status in the 3rd year, when it comes around to their 4th year, because they're still carrying on, you have to return the session status again, but you keep the date the same, you can see, as the actual date when they first went to writing up, because that's what's important to us in this. And again, expected end dates would be updated if their kind of planned writing up period changed significantly.
Rachel, can I just interrupt you at that point? It's a good
Totally
point.
can, 'cause I'm actually at the end, Matt.
Oh, excellent.
So go for it.
Just going back to the changing of the expected end date, the question raised, have we considered the impact of resits not resetting the end date on the graduate outcomes population? Are we going to end up missing them or possibly giving them less than 15 months from gaining the award at the point of survey?
I would have to work that through. I'm not sure off the top of my head. I think we've looked at it, but I think they would already be in the population by the time they would be updating it, because they'd only do it at the point that they knew the answer. But I might have to take that away and double check it.
That's fine.
Unless Ruth, you know the answer.
No, not sure off the top of my head, so we can have a look into it.
Okay. Well, when we've got the answer, we'll send this back. I've got a record of the question asked, and we can share it with all delegates.
So are there any other questions then in terms of types of studying students are doing, or the types of year they're doing? The session is a little bit shorter, but it's kind of just trying to flesh out some of that detail at the student course session level, so the every year level. Okay.
Thank you, Rachel. If you have any questions, then send the questions through to training@hesa.ac.uk. Other than that, thank you very much. Thank you, Rachel and Ruth. And that is it for this week. Okay, thank you all, and have a good afternoon.